Welcome to Just Innovation Talks, a monthly podcast exploring relevant topics for early stage STEM innovators from around the world. In today's podcast, we explore leadership for today with innovation strategist and lean liftoff educator, Dr. Helder Sebastiao, to get insight into what a startup founder can do in the near term to navigate their ventures through this unparalleled economic storm. I'm today's host, Steven Rodriguez, and with that, let's begin. Helder Sebastiao, thank you for being on the show. You have a great background in lean launch methodology. Can you quickly share with us what exactly that means?
Yeah, and really I'm kind of a hybrid practitioner. I bring elements of design thinking, lean launch, lean startup, blue ocean strategy, and of what's called effectuation, which is sort of entrepreneurial thinking and acting. And there's really kind of four pillars to that. Number one is that it's very much means driven, meaning what can I do with what I have at my disposal? And also that instead of saying, oh, if only, in terms of whatever constraints exist, it's how do I embrace those constraints and build something with the means that I have. The second is to be focused on new market opportunities. There's a term in Blue Ocean Strategy that talks about non-customers. Why compete for existing customers when there are these underserved, in some cases ignored customers that are out there? What can I do to reach to those customers? So it's creating new market spaces, if you will. And then from design thinking, the customer-centered design, really looking at things, opportunities from the lens of the customer, and engaging in rapid, relatively inexpensive experimentation to figure things out. And then the last part is kind of tied to that, which is that business models are not written from a business plan, but emerge as a result of this experimentation of various aspects of your product or service. So.
Yeah, no, great. And it's curious that you mentioned Blue Ocean. You know, lots of entrepreneurs right now are just trying to get into the market and they're trying to really compete. But what would you recommend for somebody to kind of, lead into a Blue Ocean strategy? How do they make that transition, or what would you recommend for them?
Well, one of the things that this crisis has sort of re-emphasized for us is the divide that we have on so many different levels between the haves and the have-nots, right? And so if there are opportunities for you to serve those underserved markets and to do that cost effectively, clearly there's a demand there, right? So, I mean, that's certainly one area. I was looking at Everlywell in Austin, and they were looking at sort of this direct-to-consumer lab testing, right? It's like going to the lab and getting lab results done can be a very complicated kind of thing, and they wanted to demystify that for consumers. So there was a new way of looking at the business model for lab testing, and then they crazily went and developed a COVID test in 2 weeks, right? So it's just like the nimbleness of being in the right place at the right time, but looking at where other people aren't looking, right? No one thought about going direct. How does that work? Going direct to consumers to do lab testing, right? So it's that's the kind of mindset you need to have, is to say, challenge assumptions about who is a good customer, challenge assumptions about what the right business model is and what the industry rules are in a particular market. So.
Now, can you tell us a little more as to those tools? What do you see as the most effective in terms of weathering this current market?
Well, I see there's three basic approaches, I think, mindsets that you need to have. Number one is you really need to not be thinking about outside investment at this point. It's like, how do you leverage the means that you have at your disposal? What do you do well? Who do you know well? And sort of to really squeeze out what from the cash that you have. I'm not saying that funding isn't going to be there, but it's a different world. I mean, we're looking at a situation where we may not get back to quote unquote normal, whatever that means, until the end of 2021. So that's your reality. If you've built your venture on the assumption that you're going to be able to raise a fairly significant amount of capital over the next 12 to 18 months, got to change that mindset. And it's, how do I leverage and put myself in a position so that when the spigot opens again, I'm ready to collect on that, ready to get that funding to grow. So that's step one. How do I best leverage what I've got? The other is seeing opportunity from the constraints that have been imposed, right? So a lot of companies, a lot of startups are already doing this, but you have this suddenly larger pool of people who are looking remotely. So why is your recruitment effort just in your local market because you wanted to have that ideal little mom and pop, that little startup that's over a garage somewhere, right? You can literally tap into talent across the globe. So take advantage. That's a constraint in a way, but that's actually created an opportunity to access and more people. And there's a lot more people in the market right now, unfortunately, because companies have had to let people go. There's a lot of talent out there that you could tap into if you're willing to sort of become more digital in how you operate your business. And then just these new market opportunities that have arisen, in healthcare, in education, in helping people get connected. All of these things that have happened to us that have changed fundamentally how we work and how we interact are also opportunities to create better solutions. Zoom all of a sudden went from something that a few of us knew about to a tool that we're using right now that everyone's utilizing. And then the third kind of element of it in your toolkit has got to be this willingness to pivot continuously. This isn't my phrase, I saw it somewhere, but we have to now have a living business model. And what that means is your business model literally is up for renewal on a daily, weekly basis in terms of evaluating what's going on in the market opportunity. So those are the three kind of broad tools mindset that you need to have in this environment.
Yep, and with those tools though, you kind of have to lead into them or lead them properly. What would you say are you seeing right now that's effective in terms of leadership qualities? What would dovetail those tools the best?
Yeah, absolutely. I think number one is striking a balance between confidence and humility. You want to obviously let yourself be confident in yourself, project that confidence and control to your team or the people that you're trying to recruit into your startup. But we got to be humble, and that includes me in answering these questions for you, right? It's like there are so many variables at play here that to assume that we've got it all figured out is crazy, right? I mean, I can sit here and make projections about when things are going to get back to normal or when you can expect this or expect that. We're all just guessing, right? There's all these different things that there's been such a domino effect on how things have played out. So be confident that you can figure it out, but be humble that you haven't already figured it out. It's an ongoing process. I think another key element today that always was important, but is even more so, and this is for people that have just pulled together a team, is empathy. Empathy for your customers, empathy for your team members, right? These folks are now teachers, or at least teachers' aides, right? My wife's a teacher, Montessori teacher. Parents have been thrust into the role of being her teacher's aides in terms of making sure lessons and things are getting done. People have all these other demands. They may have parents that they can't see because they're at risk. So there's all these other things on people's minds besides your venture. And you have to have empathy to that. You have to have empathy to your customers in terms of why they may be delaying a purchase or why they may be, they have different priorities now. So empathy is a really important leadership tool to have. Transparency, candor with people. This is tricky, right? I mean, you may have to let go of people you don't want to let go because in the short term, you've got to preserve cash, but you've got to be honest. This is a very there's a lot of anxiety, right? So part of being empathetic is actually being honest and letting people know exactly, hey, this is the situation. Here's where we are today. If these things happen, we'll be okay. If they don't, we'll have to kind of reevaluate and look forward. So just kind of regular, frequent updates. The hardest transition for an entrepreneur is when you start out, your investment is in your idea, but over time, in order for your idea to succeed, you have to make your investment in your team. And this kind of goes back to the humility. It's like that confident, don't worry, I've got it all under control, and then suddenly things blow up. It just ruins your reputation with customers and with people who you may want to bring on. And then being flexible and being ready to pivot as needed, which I mentioned earlier. So just having that ability to say, yeah, this is where, based on what we know right now, the course we should be taking. But again, we need to pivot because these things have happened. Imagine right now being someone who is trying to figure out when they can ramp back up. You've got to be flexible about when you open, how you open, the way you roll things out, when you bring people back in, that kind of thing. And then the last thing is, again, a leadership, this leadership that's really becoming a CFO in your mindset about managing cash and reducing spending. What's really essential to keep this business going, and what's really extraneous that we don't need to worry about right now. So it's really that leadership ability to really focus in on what's really important for today.
Yeah, it's great that you mentioned empathy, and empathy across many ways, but also for the entrepreneur, because I feel like lots of entrepreneurs today are kind of putting the world on their shoulders and trying to bear it all, but it doesn't need to be that way.
Yeah, Stephen, it's funny. When this first hit in March, I was looking at posts on LinkedIn mostly, and there was a certain sort of pervasive machismo that you felt like, hey, if you're an entrepreneur, you've got to project this uber macho confidence that things are going to be great and no problem and we'll figure this out, and that's great. I mean, that's the beauty of entrepreneurs, right? Is that perpetual optimism. However, being someone who I call a reality leaning optimist, it's like, it's okay to take a step back. It's okay to say, hey, I'm feeling a little vulnerable right now because I don't know exactly how things are going to turn, because that's a leadership quality, because then it allows your people on your team to be vulnerable with you so that you have a better understanding about what the heck's going on in their lives. And the same thing for your customers. Your ability to be empathetic to yourself and to be vulnerable allows you to understand the vulnerabilities that others may be feeling. Yeah, I think
in the short term, we know that entrepreneurs, all they can do is either increase revenue or decrease their expenses. But what would you say works for them? How can they evaluate a market opportunity right now and pivot their business model? Any thoughts on how they can go about that process?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen these examples already. Companies that have specialties in 3D printing, developing all kinds of different kinds of PPE. We've seen distilleries going into the hand sanitizer business. So in the short term, it's about what can we do to keep the doors open? Where has the need shifted? If you do anything that's on a virtual platform, how do I repurpose that into a way to facilitate connection, whether it's facilitating personal connection or facilitating business connections with people? So it's like in the short term, it's about keeping the doors open. But then you have to kind of have that long-term mindset, which is to say, all right, is this really temporary? Or is this a new reality? Or is there a different reality that's coming as a result of when we all get, things get back ramped up and people go back? I was looking at the recent report that Accenture put out. Some of the things they talk about, some of the trends they talk about make sense. People are going to be more health conscious, right? So what's the implications about people being more health conscious and sanitation conscious for your business? Are there opportunities there, or are there challenges there for your venture? These trends potentially impact who your customer is moving forward, how you distribute the product moving forward, who your suppliers are. Some of those suppliers may have moved on. Some of them may be gone based on what's happened. And again, kind of constantly, what's the impact on our business model? What's the impact going to be on our cost structure? And in some cases, again, for better or for worse, more virtual workforce probably means in the long run a lower cost of service delivery. So there's these opportunities, again, come from these constraints. And the type of people that I need change. Do I need more customer-centered folks than technical folks? Because I'm having to deal with ensuring people that, and ensuring confidence and building trust with customers. So there's all these sort of long-term implications that we need to think about right now as we're putting out the fire and trying to keep the doors open.
Yep. And are you saying then startups scale back their workforce or decrease their burn rates or extend their runways? And how effective are those strategies?
I think that it's a reality, right? That and it's a tricky situation because you want to keep your people. You probably were able to pull this team together because they believed in you and they believed in the company. And so, but if you can't keep the doors open, you can't keep anyone happy, right? So you have to make these tough decisions about, furloughing or having to let people go. I see these posts. It's heartbreaking because companies are having to let people go, and now these people are trying to find other startups to go to. But if you want to keep if you ultimately believe that you can survive this and move on, these are the tough choices you need to make right now. And again, this is where transparency is important, so that it's not a big surprise, so that you're not left with people trying to stab you in the back later saying, this guy led us on that we were going to be employed here forever, and now he's let us go, right? So you want to have as much good karma in these times as possible. You have to make defer expenses as much as possible, save on people, try to stretch out that burn rate, because again, it might be could be 6 months, could be 12 months, could be 18 months before that money comes, the money that you need to build out your runway again is available. So.
Yeah, no, great. And I know we're talking so much doom and gloom, but it's not necessarily the case, right? What have you seen in the past 2 months that gives you hope? What innovation stories are you most inspired by?
Yeah, I have a couple of companies I'm going to give a shout out to because I appreciate what they're doing in these times. But just in general, first of all, just the companies that have really rallied around helping out healthcare workers, frontline people with pivoting to either donate or build build the capacity. I mentioned 3D printing earlier to help protect these people who are our most vulnerable right now. Beyond the people that get the illness, the healthcare workers are our most vulnerable. So that's inspiring to me, is that people responding to it wasn't just a business opportunity, it was a social responsibility that they felt. And one of the examples that I have is a company called To The Market, that was a company that I mentored in the Target TechStars program when I was at Target. And this is a company that already had a great mission, which was to help companies build ethical supply chains by sourcing from entrepreneurs across the globe. And so this is a win-win, right? We have better, more ethical products that people are consuming. Entrepreneurs around the globe who normally would never be able to tap into a global market are able to do so. Well, COVID kind of changed it, because no one wants trinkets or crafts or textiles at this time. What we need is PPE. And so she's been able to repurpose the company to help these companies source PPE and have these entrepreneurs change their business models to, at this time, create and develop those products. So to me, that's great. It's a great company. To me, that's a company that will continue to do well in the future because of its mission, but it's responded appropriately to and Jane exhibits all of the leadership qualities that I talked about earlier. The companies that are helping people stay connected, obviously, are an inspiration to me. I mean, Zoom making it free to educators to be able to connect their students. My wife is using Zoom right now. And then there are those companies that you felt like they had a good idea, and now it's like, wow, this is a great idea given what's happened. And Cooklist, which is another company that I mentored through the Target Techstars program, is a great example of that. Cooklist is a company that had developed a platform where you could sort of inventory what you had in terms of groceries at home, and then decide, hey, I want to make beef stroganoff tonight. What ingredients do I have that go into that? What's missing? Automatically generate a grocery list, and then you could buy it and have it delivered to you. Well, obviously these days, I don't know about you, but going to the grocery store was never fun for me. It's even less fun now that I have to put on a mask and keep 6-foot distance. And I mean, thank goodness that these stores are staying open and they're doing this. But it's like, here's a right place at the right time solution in terms of helping people and helping people navigate their daily life. And they've got all these other things to do, all these additional duties now to do, and making a grocery list is not at the top of anyone's list. So this just seems to be that company that's at the right place at the right time. And then I mentioned Everlywell earlier. The fact that they could create a test kit in 2 weeks is inspirational to me for COVID. And again, it's still consistent with their mission, which is to try and change the lab testing model. So those are some examples. So I'm always an optimistic leaning realist, and those are some great examples for me.
And that's great. I know that although not ideal, there are opportunities to take from all this. And so if you see things from the bright side, you can create those opportunities. You can find them and seize them.
There's no shame in solving problems, even though they're problems we wish we never had, right? So it's just like, if you feel like you can contribute and do it genuinely, go for it. Do it. There are a lot of great opportunities, but be genuine in serving the customers who are represented by those opportunities.
Helder, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been super insightful.
Fantastic. Well, this was great. I enjoyed it. Stay healthy, stay safe.